Hi folks, and welcome back to Project Polytunnel, where there has been a lot of progress. I've wanted to do a lot of this off camera instead of boring everyone with, like I did with the greenhouse video, the greenhouse series where there were 10 videos. And it's going a bit slower than I would have liked. Last you saw this, I was just starting to dig out all the raspberries. They've all now gone. I haven't dug over the whole thing, and I'm not really prioritizing that. I will do that at some point. Half is going to probably be covered and half is going to be kind of in the ground, exactly like I've got in my newer greenhouse. And I love it, to be honest. Some things do really well in the ground, but my chilies, that kind of thing, I just prefer in pots, get that little bit more control. And I love this kind of thing. When you have a big project that just kind of takes over your life, it becomes like your default, the thing that you start thinking. Every morning I wake up and I'm just like, right, when are we doing the polytunnel? It's like my default action at the moment is working on this polytunnel. It's just kind of all consuming. And I just love that. It's one of my favorite things when you've got a big project. Anyway, here, let me show you what I've done so far. I was here pretty much all day yesterday throughout the rain and the storms, just getting my head down working. We had a few little sunny spells, but the weather was diabolical. I tell you what folks, today we've got some proper Cumbrian weather. I'm hopefully going to be digging in the anchor plates. Too wet to film, just want to get on with it. It's mostly square with the measurements. I need to do a little bit more, but Steve is definitely, hopefully, Steve would be proud of me working in this. This is just like the kind of Cumbrian weather that he would have been working through. And it took me ages to get this thing square. I've now set out all of the foundation tubes in their kind of final position. You've got some on that side, some on that side, some are in the corn, which is really frustrating when you've got to try and use string lines and tape measures in amongst the corn. I nearly ripped it all out at one point. I was getting really stressed out, but no, we've made really good progress, and the diagonals are perfectly square, which is the main thing I wanted to get right. Now, with these foundation tubes, you're never going to get it perfectly square because they're going to move a little bit in the soil, especially once you plug them in to the hoops. And I noticed even with Steve's, the ones along the edge weren't perfectly square. If you look along his base rail, you could see it going in and out a little bit. But so long as they're square enough, that is what's going to give the structure the rigidity that it needs, and make sure that there's no kind of defects in the plastic or particularly stressful points that they're on. So these are the two that are in. And you can see I've done a bit of kind of groundwork here, and this is the one I started with because this is the one that had to go deepest. This little path is where the ground is the highest, so I wanted to get this one as a kind of datum point. And it's a lot of work, but that one's in now, and I might have, if anything, dug it a little bit too deep, which is going to make a little bit more work for myself with the other ones, but that's fine. It's all fine, I think. And this string line I've been using throughout, and now I know that that is perfectly level with that. And the plan for today, I'm hoping, because I only got those two done yesterday, it was bloody hard work, I'm hoping I can get all of these done today, but we're going to see how it goes. I did make a very interesting discovery, and that is about the soil depth on this plot. I think I know now why nothing really wants to grow. Even the squashes, they're sort of starting to get away, but not properly. I know why the corn was rubbish. I know why the potatoes are looking rubbish. And it's because I think there's about 1.5 foot of soil. It varies in different bits, but this bit down here, there's maybe a maximum of 2 feet. It wasn't so bad over here. When I was digging out the cherry trees, I did hit the clay, but it went a little bit deeper. So it varies a little bit depending on where you are on the plot. But I did notice it when I was digging in the potatoes, and it's been so bad on these first two, and it's why it took me so long, because after about 1.5 feet, you just hit rock solid clay. So I'm going to crack on with these, and probably next thing you're going to see is me showing you and complaining about the clay. Right folks, okay, so I've run into some difficulties, and I thought twice about whether to show you this or not. I thought about just, maybe glossing over it and trying to look competent, but we like to be honest about these things, and I like to show you what's going on. So I think the problem is that the first two that I did, I just dug in way too deep. This is the first one, and to be honest, I hadn't really thought about the overlap. I thought I'll just try and get the top level, but we've got to slide the hoops onto these, and I'm gonna have to dig around that a little bit to kind of reveal it and actually get the poles on. And I thought, I was looking at it just now thinking, oh, I might have gone a bit too deep. And then I started working on number 3 over here. And let me just show you the clay. I actually took a picture that demonstrates it really well, but honestly, there was maybe half a foot of soil here before you hit the clay. And I started going at this one. I've got a little auger, which was lent to me by Elmo, one of the neighbours, really nice guy. He came over yesterday and was like, you can't do this with a spade, what the hell? Just looking at the clay like concrete, you know. I started putting this one in and I've hit the bedrock almost. It just feels completely rock solid. I can't get any further in with the auger. And I've got to do so many more of these. And I thought, actually, you know what? As heartbreaking as it is, I think it actually makes way more sense to re-excavate the 2 that I've put in too deep and just raise the level a little bit. So they're still going to be plenty deep. You can see the anchor plate there. I'm going to slide that down a little bit. That's just risen up. So it's going to have all that weight of soil on, and this is the new height. It's just come up a little bit. So at the rest of the line, it is going to be a little bit higher, but I think that's fine. And that's going to mean that I can kind of it's still a lot of work digging them in this deep, trust me. But where the clay is so solid, you can't put a block on and hammer them. Yeah, I've done that loads and I've just shattered loads of blocks of wood. Even like the hardwood kind of blocks that I've got, they just shatter because you hit it and nothing happens. It's just going into rock solid earth. So I'm going to raise up this second one as well. And it's sort of like one of those things where actually sometimes it's better to look at your mistake, address the mistake rather than being stubborn and just persevering, because I am a bit bloody minded with these things and I can just, you know, end up putting my head down and just spending so much time on all of this. And it's probably a bit easier this way, and it's not really going to affect the stability of the tunnel whatsoever. They're still in really, really deep, especially with these anchor plates. To hole number 4, and I just thought I would take this opportunity to show you exactly what I mean about this clay pan, because I'm only about a foot down at the deepest, well, not even that, 9 inches on this side, 6 inches on this, and this is where it just becomes solid. That is me as hard as I can, and you can see the colour. That is just the clay. And it's no wonder that things don't want to grow. And first tunnels say that you want to get the plate about 40 centimetres deep. So I hit the clay pan and then I've got to go through about 10 to 20 centimetres of this without even mentioning how deep the actual pole, the actual foundation tube itself needs to go. It's got about that much further to go. So that is why this is taking quite a long time. I managed to finally get one side. Each tube is taking about an hour to fit in, and I was feeling quite happy. Just come over to this side, and I didn't know until now, but apparently this end is much taller than that end, which means I've got to dig these poles in to the point where they're bloody level with the ground. Look at the size of this. That is a lot of digging, and I don't think I'm going to get all of these done today somehow. Hi folks, well, it's nearly 7 o'clock in the evening. I started today's video, I think it was about 9:30. I did go home around 2 o'clock for some food, but we have made very good progress. It's good news, we're doing well. Let me spin you around and show you. Today has been bloomin' hard graft, but I am so pleased. I've just taken you know, my head's been down the whole day, and I've just picked up the camera and I'm taking a little minute now, and I'm feeling very, very happy. I'd planned to just do like matter of fact, but you know what, I'm just, it feels so good to be making good progress with this. You can see there's 3 here. They've got a nice big piece of timber that gives us a nearly perfect level. Everything is pretty plumb, pretty square. There's there's an inch here, an inch there, but nothing is really more than an inch out, and that's kind of within the tolerance. Even the manual says that's fine. So this is just the last one now, hidden in here, hidden in the corn, and you can see there's a few casualties here. But funnily enough, neither of these had actually fruited. Maybe these guys just always knew that they were fated for the compost heap, but quite fortuitous really that they hadn't set any fruit. So we haven't really lost anything. And earlier I showed you, digging how much work it was. Well, I come up with a little bit, how you iterate on these things as you go. And this might help someone if you're doing similar. But what I've done is I found a little pin, just one of these little kind of green coated plastic ones, and it's really thin, which actually makes it perfect because it's got a flat top. You can hammer this into the ground really easily, nice and deep into the clay, and you can put your pole on top of it, or you can slip that in. I had all my poles like perfectly measured out, so this has been really easy to just slip in, and then basically I've been pouring water in the top here. That just kind of pops into there. It's quite good if you can do that and then take a little break as it kind of percolates in. This pin is just doing a perfect job of loosening that really tight clay pan, and you can basically just get in there, give it a bit of a ram, and it really does loosen everything up. And the other thing I like about this is once you've got it in, you can pop it in really deep. But now that I've got that in, I can dig around this for the anchor plate and it will stay in. That just makes life so much easier. And then when you take this out, you've got a nice kind of, whoops. You've got an unmistakable hole for this to slide back in, and then you can get your block on, and it's actually going to start going into the ground. I had before where this was just on the solid dry clay and it would not move. You could hit this block 30 times, it would maybe move a millimeter if you were lucky, but doing this and then giving it a bit more water and waiting is generally, I found, proving quite effective. Let me get this last anchor plate done as well. You can hopefully see what I mean here, where you can dig around it and the peg, this little peg, will stay in the ground quite nice. And I must say, this little patch with the strawberries and the sweet corn, soil is not nearly as bad as other parts, so a lot deeper before you hit the clay. And it looks like it's actually got a decent amount of organic matter. Since using this pin method, it's probably going more than twice as quick as having to get in and actually dig out into the clay pan. A lot of worms kind of centered around these sweet corn roots where the compost is, where that silver grey compost is. Because they're in there doing their job, I think. You almost always end up at the end with just having to get in and kind of scrape out, because you want the base to be nice and level for this anchor plate to go into. I've just about hit the clay here. Pop on the anchor plate, check it's all right. Yeah, that's perfect, which means no more digging, but now we just need to get this tube nice and level. This is an unfortunate side effect. I don't know if you can see that coming out. Yeah, that is kind of gross. I have had to be careful that I don't use too much water. I did that on one of these and it just turned into a quagmire. It was really hard to kind of compress afterwards and all that kind of stuff, so caution. So satisfying to actually see something go into the ground when you hammer it. I wasted a lot of time on those first two before I puzzled out this method. That's actually almost there already. I've been checking the level of this, and the main level you want to watch for, that's perfect. That way is the lengthways. So this way wants to come towards me a little bit, because if this isn't square, then your actual hoop might be kind of a little bit off, and that one you don't want. Just pull that in a little bit and it's nearly actually level already. It's nearly deep enough. That is perfect. What I do quite like to do before you put the anchor plate down is just get a nice kind of a loose scatter of soil and kind of just pop that, like shake it loosely around so that as you put the plate on, it all compresses and it's got like a nice level thing. You don't want a big gap under here just because it might kind of buckle the plate over time when it's got the weight of the soil on top of it. I haven't screwed those in yet. Whoops. I don't know why I'm giving you tips, you know. If anyone needs an instruction guide for how to put a polytunnel, I will of course link Steve's videos for when he first put together this very polytunnel. He's got a brilliant guide series and you know, I'm just showing you me muddling through it. We'll get there eventually. All I actually have to do now is backfill this bad boy. And we're done, the tubes are actually done. I'm literally ecstatic. One weekend and I've done the tubes. And then I like to get in, just as I go, give it a good bit of compression down so that there's actually some weight on this anchor plate. I can't believe it's actually done. I gave myself a target of getting this done this weekend. And I thought it might be one of those, like, you know, those stupidly ambitious targets that are never going to come true. I actually put up one of the hoops earlier just to double check, you know, that it was 10 foot wide. You know, I measured the tubes and knew that they were 10 foot wide, but I was like, let me just double check the hoops are actually 10 foot wide and put one over. And it was just amazing to see it come together. It's pretty big. It is quite big. It's going to dominate this plot a little bit, but you know, I think that's fine, isn't it? It's a good thing to have the plot dominate. It's just started raining. That is rude. Had some glorious weather today as well. I'm going to go home, Sunday roast. And I've just got to show you this picture as well of a cabbage. This was donated to me by my good friend Elmo. He's been really helpful with this build, actually. A couple of tips and tools and that kind of thing. And yeah, the running joke on the plot at the moment is people give me all their spare cabbages because I can't grow any of my own. Although, I'll say that. These are the traditional JB cabbages, you know. What is that? What is that? No head. Tiny, tiny little head. I mean, that's usable. Rubbish. But, that's a cabbage. That's a proper cabbage. And there's one back there that's kind of half a cabbage. And the red cabbages are doing nothing. But we do have, there's one at the back there as well. Oh, I hadn't seen that. That looks like it might actually be needing to harvest very soon. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. But yeah, big shout out to Elmo. Oh, yes, we actually did it. We actually did it. The tubes are, they're not just done, they're done to Steve's standard. You know, I've been doing this whole thing with Steve in mind and just kind of, you know, like wanting to do him proud sort of thing, and it feels like I'm doing it. It feels like I'm really, not only am I doing it, I'm having fun while I'm doing it as well. Like, it's been a great weekend. Yesterday, the weather was appalling, but it felt so good to just wake up, and that was the one thing on my mind. So I can't wait to get the frame up. I can't wait, folks. Thank you ever so much for watching, and an extra special thank you to my Chili Pepper tier patrons, Tony, Bill, Pam, Louise, Mel, Michael, Denise, Socks in the Garden, Craig, and Andrew. Hopefully I'll see you again in the next one. Ooh, I'm really excited.